Welcome to True Crime Unraveled with my guest tonight, A.R. Hayes. Take it away, brother.
Hey, Robert, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing okay tonight. How you doing?
Well, I'm doing well. We're here to talk some crazy old true crime. We're going to do a little bit of new cases. We're going to do some Idaho 4, and then we're going to dive into some of your favorites, right? Some old time classic true crime.
Yep.
Well,
Some
there you go.
some old Zodiac, maybe some Night Stalker, Richard Ramirez. But I'm gonna let you start us off, brother.
So you're going to dig into some good stuff when we get into that, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, some of the new case updates. I know many people have reached out to me. They've been following behind the scenes. And then also, I've taken some liking to some of these as well. I don't know if you followed them so much, Robert, but we'll discuss a few of these. And then we're going to hop over and we're going to get into that Idaho 4. Does that sound like a good plan for you?
Yes, this sounds like a great plan, brother.
Awesome. Awesome. Now, we're going to start with an update into a crime that happened over 15 years ago with a young lady named Ellen Greenberg. I'm not sure if you remember this one, Robert, but she was actually stabbed over 20 times, with more than half of those stab wounds being in her back. Now, can you actually believe that the medical examiner initially ruled it a homicide, but within months changed that to a suicide? Does that literally make sense to you, Robert? Where someone could be stabbed in the back over 10 to 15 times and that would be considered a suicide?
No, I've never heard of a suicide where you stab yourself in the back, that many times. Yeah, I would figure it after like what the first two or three, you'd be dead. If it was an actual suicide, it would be a slit on the throat or a slit on the wrist. So I've never
Exactly.
heard of it. I've never heard of that being a type of suicide.
I mean, I could only imagine the flexibility it would take to be able to do that. You know what I mean? The flexibility to be able to stab yourself in your back and continuously do it, because I would think the first time that you did it, it would hurt like hell. And
Yeah.
you probably wouldn't want to continue to do it. And then if you did continue to do it, could you do it to the point that it would actually take your own life? But, and she's a first grade teacher. And when she was found, she was actually found dead inside of her home, where she was behind a locked door of her apartment after her boyfriend, who had left the home, and all of a sudden she's back behind that closed door. And in my mind, I'm trying to think, so you're going to lock yourself into your own apartment, and then you're going to take your own life, and then the boyfriend's just going to show back up and not understand why or how that all happened. And it's really crazy, because initially it actually had been deemed as a homicide by the medical examiner. So there had to be something within that. And I'm sure you would agree, Robert, for a medical examiner to go through the full autopsy and look into everything that could have transpired, the knife wounds, the different stab patterns, to deem that as a homicide compared to a suicide, they had to have found something, right?
Yeah, yeah, they would more likely have found something, to deem it from a suicide to a homicide. Yeah,
I mean, I
maybe
would
the
think it would be the patterns, probably, and probably the area that you would be able to reach. I mean, I can't imagine. I mean, if you really put it into your mind, if you thought about it, if you were going to take your own life, would you stab yourself in the back?
no, I would not stab myself in the back. I would more likely probably try to slit my wrist or something to that effect. Um, yeah, me and my short arms, I wouldn't be able to reach my back, and just
I,
like you stated before, it would be like the sheer pain, and the only way to actually die from something like that is just to bleed out.
yeah, and that's kind of what I'm thinking to myself too. Most people, I mean, I don't know many people that want to take their own life and do it in a way that's going to take a long time for you to lose life. I mean, I would figure that you would probably want to do it in a manner that would take your life. in a quick way,
Yeah.
in a quicker manner. And I just don't see wanting to endure the pain of stabbing yourself in the back. So I think the medical examiner realized after a certain amount of time, we're talking 15 years, they have now reopened this case. They've listed it as a homicide now because I believe, one, the family obviously were filing many of civil lawsuits regarding this. And I think that put a lot of pressure on the local investigators to reopen this, because I mean, obviously the emotional distress and just the feeling of the city and law enforcement mishandling the investigation probably would drive those parents to really put a lot of pressure on that. So
Yeah.
now they've reopened that case and they now have deemed it as a homicide. I just wonder where now. I mean, it's been 15 years, my friend. And Robert, where do you start that investigation at this time? Do you go back to the boyfriend that I would figure you've probably interrogated numerous times? You probably talked to him time and time again. And if you didn't get the feeling or the hint right off the bat that he could be involved, how are you going to reapproach that now?
That's a very, very good question. I mean, if this guy was raked over the coals 15 years ago, for this, yeah, I would start, yeah, if there was any like maybe DNA found on her body, yeah, I would, or if they maybe collected DNA when this crime happened, yeah, I would go back first and retest the DNA, and then I would have the boyfriend come in and not interrogate him, but just get like some DNA samples from him to see if maybe the DNA on her matches his DNA, or if it doesn't match, if it doesn't match him, then whose DNA is on her body?
And that's a good question, but you kind of have to also go ask yourself, and as we've watched here recently with the different investigations that are happening, even in today's cases, whether it be the Idaho Ford, the Karen Reed case, the Delphi, it's not even so much been proven as of yet that anything actually has transpired wrong within the investigations, but we are having so many questions and so many doubts, and obviously, nothing's come to the forefront yet to prove anything was wrong or anything was right. We don't know. But now we're talking about a case that's more than 15 years old. This would have to go into probably the cold case category, don't you think? Something like the Golden State Killer, or
Yeah,
one of the older cases that hasn't been solved that they're working through. This would fall now into that category, most likely, right?
yeah, I totally agree with you. It would more than likely fall under like the cold cases or the unsolved cases. It just like you said, just like the Golden State Killer case, because it was like years and years and years before they actually caught up to him and caught him.
Right. I mean, my question is if they've deemed this a suicide from pretty much the get go. I mean, it wasn't exactly a suicide from the get go because they did start as a homicide, but within 3 months, they changed that to a suicide. Within the 15 years from that change from, to a suicide, how much of this evidence have they kept and how much have they just let go to the wayside because it's been
Yeah.
deemed as a suicide? It probably was a closed case for a long time.
Oh yeah. Uh, I mean, if it was deemed a homicide at first, you'd think that they would keep some type of evidence. But then, like you said, 3 months later, it went to suicide. Exactly how much of the original evidence did they keep, or did they discard, or what they did with it? And then of course they reopened it as a homicide. Yeah, they would need to go back and look and see if they actually have some evidence from that time of the initial crime. If they don't, then it be a cold case for, yeah, for the duration.
And that's kind of what my worry is, Robert. That's kind of what my worry is. Now, my friend, I want to take just a moment because we got some amazing people in our chat.
Yes.
We definitely have our moderators. We have
Yep.
Swamp Rose, Christy Nevada. We're so blessed to have you here. We're thankful. One of my favorites, well, two, three, four of my, so
Yep.
many of my favorites, but I got Cheryl Burkese here from Canada, from the capital there in Canada. I'm sure it's cold. She's a hardworking woman and she's here to spend some time with us, and I truly appreciate that. Warning Label Nina, welcome. Thank you for being here with us. It's always great to see you as well. And I know you've got some great people over on your side. I'm sure you would like to say
Yes.
hello to there, Robert, as well.
Yes. Kristen in Nevada. She's popping it, between both sides. Swamp Rose. Rondi Potter. Rondi Potter. One of my other mods, Aquarius. Yeah. Hi, Aquarius. How you doing? And then we have Charisma Craft. And then I just saw 12 gauge. He popped in for a minute. How you doing, 12 gauge? And
And
go
Layla
ahead.
Balzac, thank you for joining us as well. We're going to try to do our best, Robert, to mingle within the crowd tonight, and we're going to
Yeah.
try to pay a little more attention to our community than we normally do, as we're pretty good at rattling our gums and talking
Yeah.
as much as possible. But this time, we'll try to pay a little bit of attention.
And I see Ty Knots. He just came into the chat. Hi Ty, how you doing? And I see the Maven over on your side, brother. So you have the Maven
Yep.
in your chat.
And
And
Catherine S., thank you for joining us. Catherine S. has been one of my biggest supporters because she understands what I've been through in my life. She understands the justice system and how difficult it is to navigate. And I've always appreciated her very kind support. Whether we've had a disagreement in regards to something about a case or about a creator, she has always been so supportive, and I'm very appreciative of that.
yeah. Yeah, you and I we have a good awesome community around us. Yeah, especially tonight with everyone in chat and people who like our videos and watch our videos. We always have some awesome support, especially when it comes to Pete. How is Pete doing? Have you heard anything from him?
So it's fun. It's kind of a funny story. I reached out to Pete today because I hadn't heard from him in about a week or two. So I gave him a call, and I could just tell right off the bat he's chuckling behind the scenes. And I'm thinking, Pete, what do you got going on? So he's actually out and about with some of his old buddies, his band, and they're on a little bit of a road trip together, just having a ball. But he says, "AR, I've been trying to call you, and I just keep getting this really weird Oriental lady answering your phone, and I just can't figure out who it is." And I said, "Pete, what are you talking about, Pete?" He says, "I call like every other day, AR. I call you every other day, and every day an Oriental woman answers the phone." I said, "Well, Pete, I got to say, my wife is not Oriental. My wife speaks perfect English. She's not Oriental, and she doesn't answer my phone." So he ended up looking at his phone and realized he was not calling me. And I'm not going to say who he's been calling, but it was not me. And so we had a good chuckle about that. But it sounds like he's doing well, and him and I will be speaking again tomorrow. But the great thing is I know he's amping up to try to make a comeback onto the platform, which is exciting for I think all of us because he's a very
Hmm.
interesting individual. He's a very nice man, and he's well loved within the community as well. So be
Yep.
excited to see him back as well. So
Yeah, I miss watching Murder Metal Mayhem. He
yeah,
Yeah, he's one of my favorites. It's him, you, Lucky, and of course Kiki. And I do float around to other chats. And that was an awesome live today with Miss Potts. I'm sorry I wasn't there to see the first of it, but I thought you did a really good job on Miss Potts live this morning, brother.
it kind of caught me off guard, and that's another little funny story that you and I were chuckling about here before we came live. I had gotten up to take the dogs out to go to the restroom, and I'm kind of moving around, and I always check into YouTube to see what's going on. As I get moving around, I see Miss Potts is live. I don't know who's on panel with her. I don't know anything that's going on. I just said hello in the chat, and next thing you know, there's a link dropped saying, "AR, get up on panel, get up on panel." So I got up on panel with her. It's the first time I've ever done it. It was a great invite. I was so appreciative of it, and I had no idea what what the conversation was about, and she just starts throwing questions, and they were great questions, and I'm just scratching my head going, I have no idea what the answers to these are. I don't even know how I feel about it. But as I'm trying to get adjusted into doing the life, my wife comes out of the back, and I believe you heard her, Robert,
Yeah, I
getting on
did.
me. Like, what are you doing, and why are you not doing your chores? So it was an interesting start to the morning, but it was amazing. I watch her, and I think you do as well. I kind of support her from the background a little bit, and I root her on. She does some amazing work going over the documents. I love her quirkiness. I like her boldness. She's very straightforward. Just here it is. If you don't like it, too bad. And I like that about her. So she does great work. So anybody out there, if you haven't ventured over to Miss Potts channel, I'll drop an actual in the description of this after this live is over. I'll put a link to her channel in so you can check her out and see what we're talking about. But I like to put different links within my live. So anytime that you do see, you know, myself go live, whether it be with Robert here or whether it be with Lucky or any of them, I like to drop, various content creators into the description. Swamp Rose is one of my favorites, and I've got a lot of them out there that I like to support and drive. I like to say drive business too. And thank you, Christine, about it for dropping that link. She did drop Miss Potts' link in there, and I
Okay.
appreciate that. Um, as you know, Robert, I'm a big fan of a lot of you guys, and it's a privilege to watch you guys do your thing and really, really get going. And I did look Cam Miller into the Rushdie case. I know that one's getting ready to go to trial, and Robert and I will brush up on that one. I've been looking into that case a little bit. It's an interesting case there, Robert. It's an actual attempted murder of a writer in New York City, and it's very interesting. And you and I will catch up on that one, and then
Okay.
maybe we could do a live on that because that trial actually starts on Monday, and I know there's some people very interested in that, so I think it would be great. And I know Cam Miller's a big fan. She brings it to my attention all the time. So just know Cam Miller will be looking into that case and hopefully promoting that one as well. So.
Love Tina says, we are big fans of you guys. I am anyways. So we Love Tina loves us.
Well,
You were wanting to talk about the Griffiths case?
yeah, that Colin Griffiths case. Now, this one, I'm not sure if many of you guys know about this case. It's a 17-year-old young man. He's now he just finished his actual trial in Florida for taking the life of his mother. But the key part of this case, Robert, that's so intriguing about this is yes, he was just found not guilty of taking the life of his mother, which we'll talk about here in a minute because there's some really important stuff about that as well. But even more importantly about that, if you rewind just a year prior to that, do you know what he did?
Murdered his dad?
He took his dad's life. Now, here's the crazy thing about it, because he was not charged in the original case. He was arrested for it, but he was not charged for it. They actually dropped the charges because they deemed they could not determine whether it was going to be proper self-defense, meaning that this young man was accusing his father of actually boxing him into a room, into a corner with a knife where he was holding this kid at knife point. So the young man in the room, there was a gun, and he grabbed that gun and he fired and shot and killed his father. So obviously, at that point in time, it became an investigation, and the young man was arrested, but the charges were never fulfilled. They did not follow through with them. So his mother actually fought, got him released, got custody for him, and took him back to Florida. The original crime took place with his father in Oklahoma. So they took the young man back to Florida, where it ensued. This became one of the biggest domestic situations that you could ever imagine between a child and a parent. When the issue arose with the father, it was all because the father was taking away video game privileges from this young man. So here we are. You know how we kind of talk every once in a while about how in our day, uh, parents could get away with disciplining their children.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got spanked, you got spanked, we got chased around the house with belts. I mean, this is what happened when we were young. It's called disciplining your child to help teach them, to conduct themselves properly. Now, parents are, I, I just have to say, it's a big disadvantage nowadays, and I'm not one that promotes at all any type of abuse, but I do believe in disciplining your child to help keep them on a proper path of life. This
Yeah.
doesn't mean taking it to the extent of hurting your children, because I mean, I do come from an abusive upbringing, and so I understand all of that. But disciplining your kids, telling them they can't play video games or telling them they can't use their cell phone, is not a type of discipline that I think is abusive. I don't know how you feel about that, but I don't see it as abusive.
No, like my daughter got in trouble here. I believe I told you about it too. Here about a week ago, she flipped somebody off on the bus, and the bus driver got onto her about it. Said it wasn't nice. Don't be using that finger. And when I got home with her, I didn't spank her. I just gave her one swat and told her don't do it again. And yeah, and she said she wouldn't. And then she says, "Is that all the punishment I get?" I said, "Nope." I'm like, you're grounded from your TV and you're grounded from your laptop." And she said, "How long, Daddy?" I said, "A week." And she said, "A week?" I'm like, "Yes, a week." She said, "Well, how am I supposed to entertain myself?" I'm like, "Play with your Barbie house, play with your Barbies, play with your toys in your room." I'm like, your room's overflowing with toys." I said, "Play with your toys." I said, "No electronics for a week." And she thought that was like the end of the world.
It is crazy in the difference in today's society compared to back when I was younger, and I think you're even a little bit older than me. So back when you were
Yeah,
younger as well, our punishments were get the hell out of the house, go do some yard work,
yeah,
go break a sweat, go get out of here. You're not allowed to play inside. You're not watching TV. I mean,
yeah,
mine was literally, was some of my biggest punishments, and what my parents made me do is go work for the church. They, when I did something wrong, it was they drove me over to our local Catholic church, and they let the people working at the church know, you've got a maintenance worker right here. You don't have to pay, and he's here for 40 hours a week until we say he's no longer having to work. And it was a good way for my parents to put some discipline into me, because it took away the fun parts of what I would be doing in life, and told me, hey, you're going to learn to do grunt work, and you're going to learn to deal with it, and you're not the boss. So, I mean, in today's society now, we have a reoccurring problem here, to where the kids take it to a whole new extreme, and then they flip the bill back around onto the parents and say, well, I felt as though I was in a position, a life or death, and I had to protect myself, to the point this young man shot his father to death. and they didn't even file charges against him because obviously they said, based upon what this young man said about it, they couldn't prove whether he literally was actually protecting himself or not. But here's
Yeah.
the problem. Now you fast forward 1 year, and domestic issues between this young man and his mother begin in Florida, to where this young man is arrested and taken to jail for domestic violence against his mother, where he proceeded to have to see counselors and different people. And they all made the statement that he told them it's either he's going to kill himself or he's going to kill his mother. So when they released him out of this situation and back to the custody of his mother, the police showed up at the home that very day, the very day he was released, to have a conversation with this young man. They took him outside by himself, and he flat told them, "This is not going good. This is a very bad situation. This is not working. My mom's threatening me. I'm threatening my mom. Like, this is going to turn bad." Well, unfortunately, everybody just ignored it. And a phone call was made to 911 by this young man stating that his mother, in a dispute with him, in an argument and a fight that broke out, she fell on a knife that she was holding that killed her. So that sounds a little sketchy to me, that she just happened to fall on a knife that she happens to be holding. And if you kind of think about it, you put two and two
Yeah.
together. His original statement about his father was he was cornering him with a knife as well. So now he's stating the mom is doing it, and he took his mother's life. Well, the trial just happened. It was about a 5 or 6 day trial. I tried to check in on it as much as I could because it was a very interesting case to me, because I do remember my upbringing, and I've spoken about it quite a bit. My parents and I had a lot of issues. I had the same thing of divorced parents, and I was being shipped back and forth, and unfortunately fights broke out. I still feel bad to this day about the holes that my stepfather and I put into the walls of my parents' house, and the doors, and from the fist fights that broke out. But it never got to the point that a death occurred. It was
Yeah.
fights, and then I would leave the home, I would run away, I'd be gone. But in this case, this young man, both of his parents were taken by his own hand. In this case, he was found not guilty at trial on the first-degree murder. They did try him as adult, which I think that could have potentially been the problem. I think if a jury had maybe one been able to weigh out a lesser of a charge, and maybe not a life without parole sentence against a minor, because you have to remember he's only 17 years old. So maybe if you had presented it as a case of a minor, then they might have valued that and be able to weigh out that factor a little bit better.
Maybe a
But on top,
maybe a second degree murder, maybe a third degree murder. Yeah, and try, like you
yeah,
said, try him as a minor.
well, and that's the thing. You could still charge him with first degree, but put it over into the juvenile department, where first degree as a juvenile is it starts at about 20 years, but
Mhm.
you're guaranteed parole. They can't deem without parole, meaning that you're going to be in there until they specify that you're capable to be released. And you have to realize that everybody that actually worked with this young man, the counselors, the people that all were doing the testing on him, deemed him as psychotic. So why didn't we see something more of an insanity type situation, where maybe he was taken in and put under care of a medical professional until they deemed him capable? But the jury had it in a pretty tough way. That
Yeah.
and then also the judge did make the ruling that the jury could not hear at all about the father's death prior to the mother. So the jury had no idea that this young man had actually taken the life of his father prior to stepping into this case and going before this jury. And I think that's pretty important too.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how you feel about that. I mean, if a jury can't hear the whole argument, then can they really make a factual determination of this
Yeah.
young man's intent or guilt? Because this young man's literal defense was suicide by son, stating that his mother did this so that he would take her life, almost committing suicide by using his hands. To me, that's just a crazy defense. I hate
Yeah.
that defense.
Yeah. It almost sounds like assisted suicide. But I mean, if we go back to, let's say, Dr. Jack Kevorkian, he did assisted suicides, but he was still tried for murdering his patients. Um, but it seems like to me that this young man may have some type of maybe mental defect, like maybe a paranoid schizophrenia or some type of mental illness. Uh, and I don't understand why they didn't do the insanity plea, with this kid, because I mean, he murdered his dad first, and then a year later he murdered his mom, and in both circumstances he couldn't get along with either parent. Uh, maybe he has some type of mental illness that he don't know about.
Yeah, I mean, and that could be very much the case. But one of the very cases that came to my mind when I'm thinking about this young man's case, and for anybody that's actually thinking about looking into this case, it's Colin Griffith, and he's out of the Florida area. Now I look at the Mendez brothers because, as we all know,
Yeah.
these are two brothers that were convicted of killing their parents numerous years ago that, have been serving their entire life behind prison bars. And they were young when their situation happened as well. And it was deemed, and the fight was they were also abused, and
Yeah.
then they took the life of their family. And this has been a
Yeah.
big argument, but here we are in today's society, and this is where it's a little bit different. Is back then these young men got the rest of their lives without really having any hope or prayer of
Yeah.
getting out to see daylight again. And this young man not only kills his mother and gets found innocent, but a year before that took the life of his father and wasn't even brought up on charges for that one, even though now they're talking that maybe they'll bring up charges about that.
Yeah.
um, uh, Really, I mean, you're going to bring up charges on a case where he took the life of his father, but the hard part of all of that is, now if we go that route, he's gonna put up the same self defense claim, and it's just not going to carry the weight in the trial that would probably get him convicted, because if he could beat the one where he took the life of his mother, when it's well known there's issues and he's already said the death is probably going to happen, how are they going to prove it against the father,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah. It's almost like double jeopardy. That's the way I see it. Is double jeopardy. Somebody in chat stated that the grandma said to his mom that his mom was psycho. Um, yes, and well,
I was
Buckley
reading
just
that as well. Yeah, I
yeah,
was
but
reading that as well. And she's been known to have some major issues herself. And I don't want to disagree that there is a good chance that there was some sort of abuse, whether it be verbal, whether it be physical, we don't know, whether it be him feeling as though his privileges were being taken away for unfair reasons. I don't know. Um, I can relate to this type of situation because I do remember my upbringing and how I felt about it. But I
yeah,
also was smart enough to know And trust me, fights, like I said, they broke out in my house. It was physical. It was violently physical in my house, not towards my mother ever. But let me tell you, the men in my house, we broke walls, we broke doors, we got into it, but I was always smart enough to just leave. Like I ran, and
Yeah.
people would say, "Oh, you ran away, you did this." Yeah, I did. I ran away. I got away from the situation that I knew was becoming volatile, and I didn't want it to get to a situation where something bad. I didn't want my parents to go to jail for something. I didn't want to go to jail for something. I had already been to jail enough for other things, so I was already being supervised and things like that too. So it was,
Yeah.
I get it, but I think where we have to realize now, because a lot of people say, I mean, look at some of the cases we follow now, and we talk about people that are in their 30s that are, being suspects or defendants in these cases. Let's just utilize Brian Koberger real quick as
Yeah.
as kind of a sample discussionary figure. Everybody looks at his young age and says, well, look at the issues he had. He had mental issues. He had the visual snow. He stole his sister's phone. He had some drug issues. Everybody's pointing at this young man's issues, right? So, and that is what a
Yeah.
lot of people are going to utilize to, that's what he became today at the age of 30. So when you project that onto this young man and you say by the age of 17 you've taken the life of both your mother and your father, no matter the reasoning why you did that, you've done it. You've taken the life of both.
Yep.
What are you going to become down the road? What are you going to be in your 30s?
Serial killer.
I mean, are you going to have an issue with violence? Are you going to be afraid of handling anything with violence? I mean, I could see it in him when he was doing his discussions back and forth with the officers. I could see his volatile nature within him just by his body mannerisms and the way that he moved. It was like this kid's a tragedy waiting to happen, and I
Yeah.
had to stop myself. And my wife looked at me and says, "What do you mean about to happen? It's already happened twice."
Yeah. Now do you feel that since he's already been found not guilty for killing his mom, charging him in his dad's death, do you feel that could be some type of double jeopardy? Maybe they're thinking that since he wasn't convicted of killing his mom, they could possibly get him convicted of killing his dad.
Well, I mean, you've got to look at the scenario because, as we know, the father's case would come before the mother's case in actionary time frames. So how, if they wanted to file charges against him now in the father's case, what are they going to utilize as the evidentiary basis now that they didn't have back then when they didn't prosecute him then? Because back then they said they couldn't prove whether it was actually um, a domestic issue where he was in danger for his life, and that's what led him to do what he did. So now you have to come up here. Is a judge literally going to allow them to say, okay, now he took the life of his mother, we're going to use that as evidence in a case to bring up charges against him against the father? They can't do that. They can't do that because the judge is going to rule that outside the scope, just like they didn't allow for the father to be brought up in the mother's case. They're not going to allow, the mother to be brought up in the father's case. So now they're really at a double-edged sword. They're at a double-edged sword. How are they gonna prosecute now?
Yeah. And that's why I'm thinking there is double jeopardy if they do. Yeah. And that what they should have done, I mean, like you said, was do the father first, and then if they could get a conviction, couldn't get a conviction on that, then do the mother. But It just seems so ass backwards that they're doing the mom first when he killed the father first.
Well, you got to remember they did arrest him for the initial situation with the father. They took him into custody, but they did not proceed forward. They dropped those charges, stating that the reason why they dropped the charges is they could not make the determination that it was not abuse. They could not make the determination that he was not fighting for his life or at risk. But I think it's pretty clear now. I mean, it's always odd when you can hit that fast forward button and go forward to where it is today to find out that he took the life of his mother. And then you could rewind back and say, well, if we knew that, then. But what's even a bigger conversation about this is why hold out the fact that he took the life of the father at the mother's trial?
Yeah, they don't make no sense.
Does that
It
make
doesn't.
like why would you not allow that type of background history? And this also ties in if we get back into the Idaho 4 for a minute, because they're going to get into the limine hearings here soon, to where they're going to be able to decipher. Both the prosecution and the defense is going to fight on what's going to be allowed to be spoken of in the trial and what's going to be excluded. What are they not going to allow to be brought up or discussed at trial? And I just at the end of the day, I scratch my head and I just wonder, this young man took the life of his father, and now he's sitting here charged with first-degree murder as an adult of his mother. Why wouldn't you allow that to come into play? Like, why
Yeah,
wouldn't that be spoken of? I think that we do have to be protective of individuals' privacy rights and things of that nature. Like, I 100% am in agreement when it comes to the Brian Koberger case. There is no need to bring up the writings when he was a 14-year-old young man talking about visual snow. I don't think there's any reason why you bring up the fact he took his sister's cell phone and his dad called law enforcement to teach him I don't think any of that plays any part. Like, I
no.
don't think any of that matters. But it would be a very different situation if Brian Koberger had taken the life of somebody prior to this case, and the judge saying, well, we're not going to allow you to mention that at this quadruple homicide trial. We're not going to allow you to bring up the fact he's already done this before. And Mikey S., thank you very much. I truly appreciate it, being a member for 4 months, and also gifting another membership to someone else who sadly now has to deal with me as a member of my channel. Les was actually gifted. Les, Robert, is absolutely an amazing individual. She is the moderator for Post Woke World. So,
Yeah,
very nice lady.
yeah, she's the first person I talk to when I go into Post Woke's chat. It is Les, and I want to say thank you to Christy Nevada for being a member on the channel for 9 months.
Isn't that amazing? Somebody actually followed you for 9 months. Can you believe that? How have we not scared these people off yet? We got to work harder, Robert. We got to work harder.
I have one of my members has been with me for 11 months. Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's amazing stuff. How long have you been a creator now, Robert? How long have you been doing this for?
Well, I started in the true crime community. It was back, I believe it was late 2023, early 2024.
And I can't even think of what month or year we're in now. And Cheryl Burkey, she's been a member with me. It just popped up for
For
12
a year.
months.
Yep.
Yeah, and she says I can't get rid of her. Well, I would never want to. Let
No.
me tell you, Robert. This young lady, she's a hard worker. She gets up in the morning probably before I even go to bed for the night. And she sends me emails and she shares some of the greatest stories with me and personal experiences, and we've just really connected. And that's the one great thing I think about our community. And I can look within to my chat and my community and the people that comment on my videos, and we build connections, and
Yeah.
it's just it's so amazing to be able to do that. And we as creators, and I know Swamp and Christy Nevada, they work as creators, and Post Woke World, I mean, we talk about this all the time because, we as creators, we know how lucky we are. We know how blessed we are. Well, the
Yeah.
majority of us, at least. And it's always one of the coolest conversations, like when you and I and Swamp and Christy Nevada are able to get together and discuss just how amazing our community is. We tell these stories and the people that we know, and it's just heartwarming, especially for someone like me that just, when I came to this platform, I never expected it. I never thought it would happen. I remember doing just basic videos on my cell phone. I had no thumbnails. I had no intros. I had nothing special going on whatsoever. It was just literally me raw, sitting down, talking, and some of the best support ever came out of that. I was just in awe, just shock, just absolute shock. So I do remember bumping into you pretty early, Robert, when you were breaking in. I don't know how long I'd been on the platform at that time, but I do remember you breaking in, and I would venture over into your lives late at night and try to catch up with the things you were talking about. I'd even throw you some advice here or there. Here I am in
Yeah.
your lives. You don't even have a clue who I was, and I'm just shooting
Yeah.
you little bits of advice, and then we were able to connect down the road, and you and I were talking about that as well before the live. And it was just one of those rare things where it was almost, we became brothers, and we were stuck together, whether it was good times, bad times, hard times, whatever it might be. We were attached at the hip. Even when we got
Yeah.
pissed off with each other, we would dust it off and we'd move forward. And here we are today, still doing lives. So
Yep.
it's pretty crazy.
Um,
Now,
Mark and Be- Mark and Betty says just a relaxing conversation. Albert and Robert, cheers.
well, that's the way we got to be. I mean, with true crime, it's definitely stressful enough. It's painful enough. I mean, we're dealing with some pretty difficult conversations in regards to
Yeah.
these cases. Nobody wants to talk about these things, but Robert, the other night on your live with the young man that you had on there with you, I mean,
Yeah.
he gave you some very valuable information by stating every single day there's a new case to talk about. True crime's not
Yep.
going anywhere, and that's scary to think about. That every day there's going to be something new that's devastating that we're going to talk about and try to make light of. And it's not because we're grifters. It's not because it's all about making the money about this, but it's bringing awareness. It's helping people through the pain. And that's why, we do it in a different way as many others. We're not pointing fingers. We're not accusing anybody of anything. We're discussing the emotional chaos and the opinions, and then we discuss facts of the case as well. But we're not here to accuse anybody of anything. Even this young man that just had his case, you know, not guilty. Even though I feel the writings on the wall that this is not going to be the last time that we see him in a courtroom for an unfortunate event or a violent crime, I can't state that with all certainty or fact, because maybe he's going to straighten his life out now and go a different path. So
Yeah. I actually heard from the YouTuber that I had on the video from the other night. He's headed to New Mexico to do some videos down there, and yeah, and there's going to be a follow up to that. To the video that him and I did the other night. It's going to be a follow up here in the next couple of weeks. We're setting it up in the background, but yeah, he was at an airport in Denver waiting for his flight to New Mexico, and he's going to be filming about 3 or 4 videos down there. and he's always on the move, brother. Like constantly,
Yeah.
he's on the move.
Well, unfiltered lucky's in New Mexico, and I travel there quite a bit as I've got a lot of family kind of in that area. I know the area. Maybe one day we'll all meet up in New Mexico and go to White Sands and just play with aliens. Now, if I could, Christy, Nevada, or Swamp, if you could do me a favor, if we could drop Robert's link in the chat on my side, that would be great. What I would like to do is ask anybody and everybody, when you get a chance, please pop over to Robert's channel as well, which is True Crime
True.
Unraveled. I'm sorry. I know what it is. I just like brain farted right there, my man. I can't believe I did that. But everybody, if you could pop over there and give him a like and give him some love as well. I'm so appreciative of him working with me tonight. We do plan on doing this much more often, where we're going to focus in on new updates on cases. We're going to focus in on Idaho 4 and other major cases that are happening that are working their way through the process. And then we're also going to tail everything up with at least one or two discussions at the end of the night of old, cool, true crime cases that have been around for a long time that have intrigued us both, that we like to discuss and just try to remember, and then maybe we can even bring back some memories of those in people's minds as well. So
Cool. I see Detective Maury is in the chat. Tell me
yeah,
about it. I have a brain queef every other day. So is
at
so
least
Detective
at
Maury.
least you have a brain. I don't know what I got going on between my ears, but it's something.
So what would you like to talk about now, brother? Should we dip a little bit into the Idaho 4 stuff?
Yeah, I think that's what a lot of people really enjoy talking about. I think there's so much literally going on. We did find out, obviously, I know many people have already started jumping in, they're covering it. And I'm going to do some content on this, and I really feel this is actually something that people should be worried about as well. Robert, as you know, the traffic stop in the August traffic stop of Brian Koberger, that's going to be utilized now. The prosecution filed the documentation through the courts that they're going to utilize that stop and that body cam to prove identity, the car, and the phone of Brian Koberger, which, at the end of the day, I kind of knew that would come about. They would
Yeah.
have to try to prove that in some way. But ladies and gentlemen, we got to really kind of put some of this into perspective real quick. And Robert, I know you remember this as well. One, we watched where officers walked to the back sliding door of the actual crime scene home, calling Kaylee out of the home to discuss a noise situation with her when no actual complaint was filed. They even made the statement. You see that speaker right there, the one that's not playing anything right now? We're here to give you a warning for that. And that concerned me a little bit because there was no
Yeah.
actual complaint filed on that day. They were just there to give that warning. But they even took it to the point that they took a photograph of Kaylee's ID. And Annie Oakley, thank you for becoming a member. Completely appreciated. I'm glad you're here with me. So, I mean, I've always been concerned about that, and I understand that that's not breaking policy. I know that. I get it. And many people have spoken to me about that. I just find it unsettling that us, as normal everyday citizens, including you, Robert, me,
Yeah.
Swamp, the other people within the chat, I don't really feel comfortable that that type of stuff would happen. Like, I just don't um, feel like that. So now, do we also have to worry that every time we get pulled over, that an officer is going to be able to ask us for our personal information, like our address, our phone number, our cell phone number? Um, because in all reality, And I don't know how many times you've been pulled over, my friend, but I probably hold the record. And most of mine were pulled over with no driver's license, so it's even worse. But never did I have to prove my address, and never did I have to give my cell phone.
No, I've been pulled over for a few times for either no seatbelt or speeding or following too close. But none of the cops that have pulled me over has ever asked me for my cell phone number or any type of like personal information. I mean, they'll ask for my license and registration, but other than that, I've never been asked for my phone number. They'll hand me my license back and they'll hand me my ticket, and I'll be on my way. But
Well,
yeah,
and that all makes sense. Of course, you should have to provide your identification with your name and your license number or your ID number so they can connect that you are who you say you are. I get all of that. But nowhere within your driver's license, when that officer pulls up your driver's license, they do not get your private information like your cell phone
no,
number. They don't get this personalized information. Now, of course, it is actually a law, and people should know this. When you move, you have 30 days to change that address on your
yeah,
identification. You're not supposed to move and not change your address. Here's the funny thing is I live in Nevada and I still have another state's ID, and I'm never going to change it because it's just not going to happen. But um, I get that law, but never is your personal information. So it's baffling to me to try to put two and two together
yeah.
here, that here's a suspect that not only did they utilize the IGG braking procedure to go in
Oh
to
yeah,
different ways of getting that, but then they utilize a seatbelt ticket to connect the cell phone to him to a white alarm. Just sketchy.
yeah,
It's just, and I'm not saying that's like breaking the law. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's breaking the law. I'm not saying
yeah.
this is just so crazy conspiracy theory, this or that. That's not what I'm saying. But what I do want to let people out there know, be very protective of your private information, no matter who's asking you for it. Even if law enforcement asks you for that very type of information, you do not have to turn over your cell phone number at any point in time. It doesn't even matter if you're under arrest. You do not have to give that information up. You can absolutely decline to do so. There's some reasonings as to why you would give them those types of things, like if you do not have an ID or a license on you at the time of being pulled over and they want to verify who you are, they will typically ask you for your name and your social security number. They still don't ask you for your cell phone number. So be very careful, because I believe in today's society they're building databases that are easy ways to track people. And I don't like it. I don't like the break of the privacy rules.
No, and what this goes on top of just goes on top of what you said. Here in the state of Kansas, if you get pulled over and you don't have your driver's license on you, it's a mandatory ticket. They can give you a ticket for it's called driving without a license, and and a friend of mine, he's done it a couple of times. Yeah, because he's run off, forgot his wallet at home. He'll get pulled over by the cops, and he'll have his insurance information. But if he doesn't have his ID, yes, they'll take his social security number, but they won't, and his address. But they'll give you a ticket for driving without a license.
Yeah, yeah. Now, I also want to make it very clear with people, you don't have to give them your address either. You do not have to give privatized information outside of a way to identify you. An address and a phone number is not a way to identify you. You don't have to give up your first child's name. You don't have to give up your actual birth name. You don't have to give up that information. You have to give up the very information that would be tied to either your driver's license or your state issued ID that they would be able to run through the system that would come back and show it's you. No cell phone number, no address, none of that would give them that information. So I want to
Yeah.
answer a question real quick. Jacob Way asked me. Obviously, he found it very interesting that Kaylee's parents have said that they did not get Kaylee's phone back. Now, what do we feel, Robert, you and I, that could have been on that phone? Maybe a video, maybe a text, maybe something. What do we think the police were looking for within that phone that could be utilized as any type of evidence? And I think this also ties in. You did a video about this today, Robert,
Yeah.
which, obviously was a good video, and it goes hand in hand with also a Swamp Rose live that she did that
And Miss
ties into
Potts.
Miss Potts, work that she did this morning too. So all of you did a great job of jumping into this. So maybe you can answer this. What type of stuff do you think would be in that cell phone of Kaylee's, and why do you think they would withhold from giving it back to the parents and instead keeping it as evidence?
Well, it goes back to that search warrant that Maury sent to T-Mobile, and in that search warrant, he wasn't just look. Normally, uh, you would want to look at the perpetrator's cell phone and their cell tower data. Well, this search warrant that Maury did was looking at not just Kaylee's phone, but Dylan's phone as well. And he thought that there was evidence to the crime on it. Yeah, because the way he put it to Megan Marshall is that he feels that there's probable cause that there's something connected to the homicides on not just Kaylee's phone, but Dylan's phone as well. And I've been trying to think about this all day. Um, what? Yeah, how would there be evidence on Kaylee and Dylan's phone about the homicides? And and I'm not trying to blame Dylan or anything, but it makes you wonder exactly what not only is Dylan trying to hide, but what Kaylee was trying to hide too. Yeah, because why would he be looking at those two specific phone numbers, stating that there was evidence of the murders on the phones?
And see, this is where I walked in this morning, and I joined into Miss Potts's chat, and then got summoned up to the um, to be up on panel, and I was so unprepared. I'm trying to get my mind right. I got the wife yelling about chores and things going on. Dogs wanted to go outside, so I'm trying to keep up with it, and I did my very best. And I sounded so unintelligent in regards to the conversation because I just wasn't really ready for it, and I wasn't caught up to it. But she did a very good job, and I know you went over them as well, and I believe Swamp did, and breaking down that these warrants all came out kind of at a specific time in March of 2023, which was after the arrest of Brian
Yeah,
Koberger. And after certain things were falling into place, and then they went after certain warrants being Google and other things, but they really seem to have directed these things right into Kaylee and Dylan's phone, to where I believe they even went back from the crime date, like back 6 months or something like that, to
yeah,
before that, before even the kids were living in the home.
yeah. August.
Um, right. So August back some time frame, right? Like it went
Yeah.
back to June or something that they were looking for. Um,
No,
and it's
it went from the time of the murders back to August 1st.
okay.
So
Okay. So they were looking for a connection, evidently, and it's odd that it really comes down to Kaylee and Dylan's phones, which maybe it shouldn't be odd, but to me it's just odd because you've got a focal point that many feel as though could possibly be the very target of the crime. I mean, that's debatable, so I don't want a lot of people to jump up and down. I didn't say Kaylee was the target of the crime. I'm
Um,
just saying she's potentially a target of the crime.
Mouse just
And
said Mouse just said before the crime, June to August. So
okay,
I was wrong.
that's what I was thinking that um, Miss Potts said as well, was back into June, which I knew was even before or right about the time that Brian Koberger got into town.
Yeah.
But so we're talking about Kaylee, and then we're talking about the young lady who survived the entire endeavor and is in question as being an eyewitness of the crime, on top of not calling 911 for 8 hours.
Yeah.
So to me, it's a whole whirlwind of what are you looking for, not only within Google, but also within the Reddit and the very, I mean, they're obviously looking for a connection,
Yeah.
but why? I mean, how's Dylan fit in with all of the discussions that we've engaged and thought about connection wise? How often are we including Dylan into that connection? Like, it's odd, right? Like, am
Yeah.
I just
Very
one that
odd.
feels that way? Um, so that's where, like, I got thrown for a loop. I'm like, they're looking for what from who? From I gotta go back and read all this, and I haven't had that
Yeah.
opportunity. But um, connection. And then you got to think Reddit as well. Reddit is, I've always felt Reddit was big.
Yeah.
And there for a minute, I got Reddit and 4chan confused. Like I
Right.
started mixing those two because 4chan had a lot of posts, in regards to, what people could see from their windows into the
Yeah.
house, and all this stuff. But then I'm thinking Reddit, and the thing that comes to my mind is I'm thinking Brian Koberger's survey, which is not out of the realm that PhD students would do that for their curriculum.
Yeah.
But then I started to get this wonder in my mind: who answered that survey? Who engaged into that survey? Could Kaylee or Dylan or somebody they intermingled with have engaged into that survey? And for some reason, and I know this sounds crazy, I know it does, but that young man from the frat, the Landau,
Yeah.
that lost his life, that was deemed a suicide, they had drowned in the little creek back behind the fraternity, it started to ring in my head because it could have been a hazing situation in some people's opinion. And I'm
Yeah.
thinking, did somebody reach out via that Reddit survey and talk about that? Like something with the Landau hazing that could have cost him his life, and I don't know. Am I crazy about that, Robert, or what?
I mean, you do bring up a valid point. Um, I mean, we really don't know who answered that survey, and I believe it was a class survey or a group survey. Uh, because we hear a lot of times people say, "Oh, Brian did it by himself," or Brian was wanting to know how the killer thinks. And the last time I checked, I believe that survey was a group project between him and a couple of the other graduates. So, I mean, we don't exactly know who answered that survey. I mean, I'd like to know who answered that survey, but we don't technically know. I mean, who actually answered that survey. I mean, it could have been, like you said, it could have been somebody that was tied in with the Lindau and the drowning of the gentleman in the creek, but we'll never know.
Right. I just, at the end of the day, it just swirls in my mind of, you know, who could have been responding, because I think the number one thing that baffles so many about this case, and it really throws me for a loop, and I put myself into a position now, instead of being the convict, I want to go sit in that jury box. Like, I want to be the mindset. If I sat in that jury box, what do I want to hear from the prosecution to help me
Yeah.
understand their case? And then what do I want to hear from the defense that would help defend that very case? And
Yeah.
what's lacking so badly for me, um, and I know a lot of people will say, well, there's a lot of cases you don't know the actual motive, and I get that. But there's always a story as to the why. Maybe it's not the motive, but it's a why. Like, what led up to it? What upset that person to put them into a position that they would make the decision to take someone's life, or it got out of hand in some way? You have to be able to tell a story.
Yeah.
um, and I guess because I've been into that trial setting as a defendant, like, I always knew before we got to trial what the prosecution's attempt at a story was going to be. So my defense team would always sit down with me, and we would discuss how we were planning to combat that story. Like, how are we going to go about this? What are we going to bring up? What are we going to discuss? What are we going to avoid? What do we want to try to get nullified? It was story versus story. Who was the better storyteller? Um, and I just, at this very point, the prosecution just doesn't seem to have a story.
Yeah.
And because I feel as though if they were kind of coming in, gradually from the beginning, and we see it unfolding, and then we see the arrest. Before that arrest, I felt like we would begin to learn a story. We would
Yeah.
begin to learn not only more about the individuals that had lost their lives, but the the lifestyle surrounding those individuals, that would paint a picture that didn't just leave this wide open front door to, well, now you
Yeah.
have to guess why this happened, right?
Yeah. I mean, because that's all we've heard from Olivia Gonzalez was the iconic home, and how Kaylee was so excited to live in the iconic home. The iconic home. What makes the home so iconic? Is it because it set on Greek Row, or um, and she's even stated that you know like everybody has the number for the key code that lives in that specific neighborhood. So everybody has the code for that front door. Yeah, and it just makes me want. It makes me wonder. Yeah, if Brian didn't do it, then could somebody in that specific town that had the code for that front door, could somebody in that town be the ones to do it? Because if you remember, the night of the alcohol stop on Banfield, you had well 4 or 5 people running away from the house a little bit after 3, and it was caught on body cam. Because yeah, I still believe, brother, that the murders took place way before that 4 a.m. timeline.
Yeah, I think right now, um, in watching everything that we see unfolding within the courtroom, I think one of the very next things that we're going to see get exposed, and I think Ann Taylor's going to make it very direct move that people are going to know. She doesn't think it happened between that time frame that's being depicted by law enforcement either, and she's going to utilize the fact that Dylan Mortensen doesn't remember, and that she doesn't know if she was awake or dreaming. So that's going to cancel out a time frame of pretty
Yeah.
much everything that she spoke upon. Now, where can we lay a little bit of foundation? I believe that we can lay a little bit of foundation because we all watched the grub truck video at a certain time. The two young ladies walked away from the grub truck. So
Yeah.
we have that time frame. We've got that time stamp. It's been stated that at 1:56 or 1:59, it's visual that the girls got home and dropped off. Now,
Yeah.
I still have a problem with that, Robert. I still have a problem with this visual that the girls got dropped off at a certain point of time, because to me, to make the statement that someone
Yeah.
got dropped off at that very home and walked in that front door at a very purposeful time, wouldn't you have to have a picture or a video of that?
Yeah. And yeah,
Like,
and according to the Uber driver, he just dropped them off and didn't even wait around to watch them walk into the house, because he has stated that he just dropped them off and left.
right.
So uh,
So I mean, I get the point. Let's just say it's the 1112
yeah.
camera that they rely on, that people saw the girls getting dropped off. That's not officially showing them getting dropped off. That's showing a car pulling up that they could possibly be in to be dropped off. I want to know, where do you get the exact time, where, when, how they were dropped off? How did they walk into the house? Did they walk in the front door? Did they go in the back slider door? Like, it seems like, the cops walked up to that back slider door like that was the normal way to go. What makes everybody so sure that at that very time stamp, that's when they were dropped off and walked in the door and took the dog out to the bathroom? Where are we seeing this? Like, where is this coming from? Because if that's the case, if we could see that, Robert, that
Yeah.
video would have the so-called Brian Koberger's car driving back and forth, and they would have a very good picture of it. If you could clearly see the car drop off Kaylee and Maddie, and you can watch them walk into the house, and you can make it known that's who they are,
Yeah.
then you can make out that very car that just passed that camera numerous times. Numerous times. Not once, not twice, numerous times.
I
And
mean, yeah.
it still sounds, and I don't mean to cut you off. I know you got a great point to make, but it still sounds like Ann Taylor's making a clear statement. They cannot pinpoint that car.
Yeah, and you're exactly right. And as well as you have all that activity, brother, on Banfield from 254 to 314 or 316. You have all those cars, driving back and forth by Banfield. During the alcohol stop, you have Saeed, who, I mean, like, clearly he had bushy eyebrows, but and then when they're talking to the three students, when that one student says, "Oh, well, we thought you were fake people," when they were running away from the cops, and you could see a group of people running away from the house, and it's caught on body cam, and at the same time, the officer is trying not to show it on body cam, but you can see them running away from the house about, I believe it was 314. But according to Brett Payne and Maury and Blaker, none of that shit matters. The only thing that matters to them is 329 when suspect vehicle 1 comes into the area.
Well, and think about just how miraculous this is, Robert. It's just miraculous. We have a perfect view via the body cam footage of those officers in that Banfield talking with those kids. We see the black truck distinctly. We see the
Yeah.
other car driving up distinctly. We see all of that. Isn't it amazing? Just amazing that the time frame that Brian Koberger is suspected to have entered the area was 3:29, just minutes after all that cleared up. Just
Yeah.
miraculously, all of that cleared up and ended and left. So any body cam, anything that could have legitimately caught the very road that they say he drove in on, just happens to all be gone. But that's right when he made his. So now, are we legitimately? And look, I'm an ex-planner of crimes, dude. Like, I knew how to plan crimes down to the very T of planning crimes. That's why I only got caught with a very small percentage of the things I did. But I got nailed for big things, but I got caught for a very small percentage. And it was all planning. Is Brian Koberger so good at this that he planned that he would drive his car into the area just minutes after the complete police department that was harassing kids on the Banfield just happened to disappear with all the cameras? That's just not even legitimately able to be done, man. He left
No.
his house at 2:48, a 7-mile drive, and he happened to avoid all body cams. Hmm. Something's really weird about that, man.
Yeah.
Something's really off about that.
Yeah.
I
Heather.
don't see it.
Yeah. Heather's said in chat. Literally, AR. I've said that for so long. Um, bro missed the LE by 14 minutes.
Well,
Yeah.
Heather, of
Yeah.
course you've said it for so long. Where do you think I got it? I stole it from you. But
But I
I mean,
mean,
come on, dude.
yeah.
I've watched various people that want to come out and say they have video of Brian Koberger around the house sitting in his car. They have video of him out back behind the house. No, you don't. No, you don't. Let's just stop BSing. Like,
Yeah.
everybody across the board has to just stop with the storytelling, whether it be coming from the people that want him to be guilty, the people that don't want him to be guilty, the people. Let's stop with all that make believe stuff. It's not.
Yeah.
Brian Koberger isn't Superman. He's not the greatest criminal in the world that he would know when everybody cam just happened to be out of the area. Yet he's going to be caught parked behind the house, hooking to the wife. Let's stop with all of that. I
Yeah.
mean, that just doesn't make sense. And I'm going to make it very clear to people. I've heard the reason why they didn't get a lot of information out quick is because they didn't want to scare Brian Koberger off. Well, guess what? He left the area anyway. So it's not about they didn't want to scare Brian Koberger or make him nervous. They didn't do anything. They didn't scare him.
No.
But in reality of life, law enforcement tries to shake criminals to make mistakes.
Yeah.
So if they feel as though you could potentially be involved in something, and Robert, I know you know this to be fact, law enforcement will put more pressure on you to see if you crack or make a mistake.
Yeah.
When I was being sought, and let me tell you, I was chased from one side of the country all the way up to Alaska. In Alaska, I meet up with some people. My car gets on to the actual ferry from Ketchikan, Alaska, to come back down into Bellingham, Washington. So I'm on the run. We're on that actual ferry. We're boarding it. My car is on the ferry. And all of a sudden, the police board that ferry looking for me because they had seen my car come through the cameras to get on there. So I literally throw the keys to these people I just met in in Ketchikan, Alaska. I say, hey, look, I'm going to meet up with you guys down in Bellingham when you guys get off of this boat. And they're like, all right, whatever you're doing. So I got off of that boat, and I was able to catch a flight. I mean, it was this whole thing. I slept in a bathroom. I flew out of Ketchikan into Seattle, Washington, which is not near Bellingham. It's a ways away from it. So I had to sleep in the airport in Seattle, where a guy, and no joke, gets caught up with a whole duffel bag full of firearms, and this is feet away from me, and I'm on the run, and he's getting hemmed up like this, and I'm like, oh my god, this guy's getting hemmed up. I got to get out of here. So now I'm catching some weird bus. I end up getting into Bellingham 2 days early. 2 days early. And I sleep in a bathroom outside, and it's like on the ocean, but not on the ocean, you know. And I'm sleeping in this bathroom, and sure enough, I get hemmed up by a cop. And I'm like, oh my God, all I have on me is fake IDs, dude. So I'm like, God, I
Wow.
hope these things work. You know, I got fake IDs on me. If he really presses me, these aren't going to work. I know I'm busted. You know what I mean? My car's on the
Yeah.
ship. I don't have any money on me. I don't have any bail money. I wouldn't even have gotten bail anyway, but I don't have commissary money. I don't have anything. So I'm like, they're rattling me, dude. These guys are rattling me. And somehow that cop, it takes my ID as valid. And he says, all right, you know, it's like 3 o'clock in the morning and you're sleeping in a public bathroom that you're not allowed to be in right now. I recommend you walk up to that street and you go to that Village Inn up there and you wait until wherever you're trying to go you can get. And I'm like, oh, thank God, I'm out of here. You know, I'm gone. And I walked, and you know, I had to find a way for 2 days to hang out. And I still remember I made it through the 2 days, ducking and dodging. I'm watching my car come up the ramp of this, you know, big cruise line ship, and there's the people driving my car off, and I'm like, are they even going to stop for me? Are they going to let me back into my own car? You know, they got all my
Yeah.
money, they got everything on them that I need. So I'm like, all right. And they let me in the car. We're cruising out there. We're driving all over the place. We drive all the way down the coast of California back to Vegas because I know Vegas so well that it's like, all right, we got to get back to Vegas. Then I can get my feet back on the ground. I can figure out what I want to do. So we get back to Vegas. And sure enough, we get back to Vegas, and my apartment in Vegas is already getting shredded up. And I haven't even been in Vegas for a month. And it
Wow.
just so happens that when I'm pulling in, they're still working. Like they have been in my apartment for days. They got a warrant for my apartment. I see them coming out with the printers that I use to print things. I see them coming out with all this stuff. And I'm like, oh my God, like, what am I going to do now? You know, I'm running out of money. I'm just like, oh my God, I'm out of money. What am I going to do? And I literally hooked up with another just random girl that needed to ride all the way back to Boston. So I'm like, all right, hop in. I'm going to switch plates on my car. I grabbed a temporary plate. And back at that time, this is back in 96, 97, the temporary plates were handwritten in permanent marker that you could write, and they would fill them out in the dealership and fill them in. You had like a month until you could register your car and get your new plates. And I
Yeah.
literally drove all the way to Boston with this fake temporary plate, got pulled over twice in Boston. And it was just a whole crazy thing. But I traveled the entire country with the FBI following me, people literally one step behind me, getting pulled over, getting cops all over me. And come to find out, when they finally hem me up, they get me in Phoenix, Arizona. They got me. And I'm sitting in the interrogation room. I'm shaking my head. And I'm so glad I finally got caught. And I'm like, I am so tired. I'm so tired. I'm drained. I can't run anymore. I can't do this. You know, I just need a break. I need to sleep. Yeah.
Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, she says, with a Sharpie, seriously, a Sharpie. Yes. And you know what's funny is on that entire trip, I used that Sharpie to continue to change the date on my temporary tag. So I actually changed it like 3 times. But so when I did get hemmed up, I'm so tired. I'm sitting in the interrogation room. and I'm waiting for him to come in. I know I have to be extradited. I've got 2 states I've got to be actually extradited back to. I've got my federal charges out of New Mexico, and then I've got to be extradited back to Texas on state charges. So I knew I was on for a whole roll, and whatever other charges, because I was forging checks in Alaska to get plane tickets. I mean, this whole thing was crazy, just crazy. Um,
Now I
and I'm
remember.
sitting in this.
I was gonna say I
This
remember. I didn't mean to cut you off, brother. I remember this was took place about, I'd say about 11 years ago. There the mobile home park I was living there was a mobile home park, and there was a mobile home next to us, next to where I lived, and it was vacant. People just moved, and people just got evicted, and they didn't want to do this stuff. So me and a couple of friends of mine broke into the vacant trailer, and there was some stuff in there, nice stuff. We started taking to my trailer next door, and one of the other neighbors saw it, called the called the cops. And here's what the funny part is. Me and my friend Danielle, we're in the house, and we're being flanked by cops, and we're both denying shit, and we came up with a story, and we both stuck to it. And my friend Carl, he was outside being interrogated by the cops, and what was so funny was this cop says, "Sir, are you being snarky with me?" and and Carl goes, "No, I'm not being snarky. I'm being an asshole." And the cop says, "Well, you do know I can take you to jail for being snarky." And Carl was lightning to him on the outside, and miraculously, Carl didn't go to jail that night. But yeah, they finally left, and me and Daniel was talking, and Carl comes inside, looks at both of us, and says, "You know, yeah, yeah, to keep from going to jail, I almost ratted both of you out. I'm thinking you wouldn't have done that." He said, "Fucking cop called me snarky." He goes, "Nobody called me snarky."
I mean, just kind of wrap mine up, but I know not everybody probably wants to hear my little crazy story as we talk true crime. But I'm
Yeah,
sitting in that interrogation room, and you got to realize I've been on the move now for months. I mean, it's been months all over the country, from Alaska all the way back to, Boston, back to Phoenix. I've been all over the place. I've been committing crimes all over the country at this point too, to try to stay on the run. Like
yeah,
it's, I was a financial crime committer, and it wasn't against normal everyday people like you or people within the community chat. Like, I knew how to print checks and were tied back to the bank so I could cash checks on the actual bank's money. Like, I had ways of doing things, and I'm sitting in this interrogation room. I'm deflated. I'm so tired. I mean, I probably smelled like I'd been on the run for weeks because I had been ducking and dodging. It didn't feel as though I had places that I could stop for long periods of time. I'd been living on weekly hotels, and I went like 2 weeks eating Mounds candy bars. Yeah, you remember the old like coconut filled crap candy
yeah.
bars? And I mean, it was like I would do anything just to be able to stay on the move. And now I'm finally caught, and I'm just like, I'm so tired. And the interrogator walks in, he sits down in front of me, and he just smiles and he says, "How do you feel?" I said, "Man, I'm exhausted. Like, I don't even want to talk to you. I just want to go to sleep. I have nothing to say. You got me. Get me to my cell." And he looks at me, he goes, "We've been on you for ever, months. We've been right behind you." And I said, "Well, that's good." He goes, "Every time that we had you pulled over, we let you go." And I just kind of shook my head like, "Yeah, right, whatever." And he named off almost every single stop that they had me. He named off an interaction that I had at a hotel with a group of individuals that it was just like a weird domestic situation that almost got me caught. And they're like literally telling me all these stories of how they had me set up, but they wanted me to continue running. And I finally just had to stop, and I looked at him. I said, "All right, look, man, I'm beat, but you got my attention. Like, now you have my interest. I I don't know why you're telling me this. I mean, if you've got me, you've got me. First of all, you've already got me on my priors that I'm on the run from. You know I'm out on parole. You know I've got probation cases that I've broken. You've got me, dude. Like, not even for a 3-year bid or a 4-year bid, or I mean, you got me for God knows what the judge is going to throw at me. So why are you telling me all this? He goes, well, I just wanted you to know that we were watching you this entire time to see who else in this whole endeavor you were going to give up. I said, what do you mean the people I was going to give up? And they're like, that's why we rattle you the way we do, is because we know you're going to run to the places where you know people, and those people are the ones that are going to be involved in your criminal activities. And I looked at him and I smiled. He goes, if I was in your position, I wouldn't be smiling. I said, well, I guess it's lucky that I'm the one in my position because I'm smiling. And he just looked at me and he goes, why is that? I said, I don't have any friends, man. So who did you think I was going to lead you to that's involved in my criminal activity when I am my own criminal activity? Like, who do you think I'm going to lead you to? And he starts naming off all these people that he's been investigating. I'm like, do you think I know any of these people? I'm a loner. I don't do anything with anybody. Like, I meet people on the move. The girl that I went to see in Boston, I had met on the cruise ship. I'd never met her before. And you're thinking I'm going to track across the country and lead you to all these people that are involved in my crimes? And he just sat there stumped, and I smiled. I said, how's it feel to be rattled? This entire time they were trying to rattle
Wow.
me, and it absolutely worked. They had me rattled. Like, I was rattled that entire trip, never knowing that they were literally locked on to me. But I was rattled, and they were doing every single thing to accomplish that, to drive me to make mistakes. And boy, it felt so good at the end when I could just look at him and say, well, I didn't make any mistakes, buddy. You didn't rattle me that good. I mean, here we are. But that's what makes me think
Yep.
of Brian Kohlberger, and people literally saying, like, they didn't want to rattle Brian Kohlberger. They didn't want to let him know they were on to him. Hell, yes, they do. They damn well do. They want you to be rattled. They want to feel like they have the upper hand, and they're pushing you into making the mistakes that will help them solve the crime. And it was like,
Yeah.
you know, here's the game. Here's the game. It's law enforcement and it's the criminals, and it's back and forth. But someone like, when I watch the Kohlbergers, it didn't rattle him. When he got pulled over
No.
in Indiana, he was not rattled. Like, he was not rattled.
Mm-mm.
Um, so to me, it's like the attempt of rattling him either didn't work because he didn't have anything to be rattled about, or he didn't get rattled until he was actually in Pennsylvania and they broke into his parents' house. But the rattling that would accomplish is he felt bad for his family's home being demolished,
Yeah.
and he potentially is watching his family get in trouble as well. And I never had to worry about that. You know what I mean? I never had to worry about whether my
Yeah.
family would be in trouble by my actions because shit, I was on the run. I was off. I didn't involve people like that in my
Yeah.
in my situation. So um that's kind of why I'm thinking to myself, and I don't know how you feel about this, but it's kind of based on how I conducted myself. And I know Brian Kohlberger and I are not the same people. We're not at all the same. We probably think completely differently. We act
Yeah.
completely differently, everything about it. But I just don't feel as though if he had committed a quadruple homicide, he's going to be at ease with his father coming all the way across the country to ride back with him in the car. Why would he put his dad at that risk? Why would he put
Yeah.
his dad at that risk? And maybe I'll just never understand
Yeah.
that, I guess.
I mean, even you speaking about his dad. I mean, his dad even had an inkling that his son did anything like this. Do you really think his dad would have flown from Pennsylvania to Pullman, Washington? I don't think his dad would have. I think his dad would have stayed there in Pennsylvania. and let whatever happened, go down. And I honestly think that his dad believes his son is innocent, and because if he didn't think he was innocent, he wouldn't have flown from Pennsylvania to Washington. He would let his son drive back by himself, and whatever happened happened.
It's kind of funny. I'm watching a little bit of the chat. I think I got when I started talking about the candy bars. I lived off of.
Yeah. I saw quite a few talking about Tobaline, and I remember when chocolate was a quarter, and when you mentioned Mounds, first thing that came into my head was that commercial. Sometimes you feel like a nut, sometimes you don't. Mounds has
Huh?
Almond Joy has nuts, Mounds don't.
Yeah,
I keep
yeah.
thinking that it's a commercial now. But I mean, what I would like to know, brother, is uh, why if this was a controlled stop, and by the FBI, because the FBI is now saying it wasn't a controlled stop, or they didn't have any involvement in it. Um, then why do we keep hearing, oh, it was a controlled stop, it was a controlled stop, when the FBI is now saying it wasn't? So exactly what was going on with the hold control stop narrative BS? And yeah, if they really wanted Brian's DNA, why didn't they get it when he was throwing his trash out in the next door neighbor's um trash can, instead of just grabbing his dad's? And his dad's came back in 48 hours, where Brian's came back in 6 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, it's always interesting because they state that maybe he didn't throw his trash or this or that. I don't know what the whole situation is. It's really
Yeah.
crazy right now. All the power just went off in my apartment. Like literally, my
Wow.
Wi-Fi is out. Everything's out right now. So if I cut out, just to let everybody know, that would be the reason why, and then it
Okay.
would have to resume when I can get it back. I'm looking for a breaker box, and I'd be shocked if my apartment didn't have a breaker box, but maybe it doesn't. Maybe it's outside. I wonder if everybody should. You should see my dogs right now. Like they're like, oh my god, we're at home with dad in the dark. This is scary. Yeah, I don't blame you guys. I'd be scared too. Shit, yeah, it's dead dark. Like even outside, it's wow. We don't have any lights.
Wow.
So literally the other day it was crazy because on the strip, um, the wife and I went out to see a friend and then catch some dinner, and the entire Cosmopolitan casino and hotels power was out. The entire airport power was out, and a couple other
Wow.
casinos' entire power was out. My wife and I are like, "What the hell's going on? They didn't pay their light bill, or what happened?" We have a major issue out here. People that steal the copper from the
Yeah.
various you know, little energy spots that are out here, and evidently that's what
Yeah.
they were doing. They were stealing the copper, and it put out a lot of electricity across the board. I think that maybe now my house is maybe they got me too. These bastards,
Thrive Off Grid
I don't
says
know.
it says I'm off grid. So apparently they live off the grid.
I actually, if I can make a choice in life, I guess it's because of the private nature that I've become in my life.
Yeah.
I lived in a very dark cell for a very long time. I'm not sure. There's two ways cells can go, in the penitentiary. They're either extremely filled with light all the time, or they're extremely dark and cold all the time.
Yeah.
And I had both. I had both, but I really liked the dark, and I liked it. I was a big fan of segregation. I liked being in the hole. Um, I mean, if I could have done all my time disciplinary in the CDU unit, I would have, most definitely. But they never let you do that. So it's like when this happens, the electricity goes out. The only thing I'm upset about is not having the air conditioner, because yes, everybody here in Vegas, we're still running our air conditioners, still 80 degrees here, shorts and t-shirts all year round. So today was a little windy, but I'm not sure why the power is up. But anything happening in the chat,
So
because I can't see the chat anymore. So
we had a question. Let me get to it. It's from Heather. Just like the FBI in Pennsylvania only wears body cams when they meet with the trash can, but not when they got to destroy the house to save the car from Brian's dishwashing gloves.
yeah, I
And
found that
then,
interesting too. Ladies and gentlemen, I was taken down a couple of times back east. And not the same case I was talking about, but even prior to that, when I was smaller scale, I got hit a couple of times. And this is back before technology was really prominent. Like, they didn't have the body cams, they didn't have all that. But let me tell you, they took pictures, via their little cameras that they would go have develop their film. I mean, that makes me
yeah,
sound so old, doesn't it? Back when they had the cameras, they had to go develop the pictures from. But they
I'm
always
right up there with
had
you.
document. They had document proof of everything that went down. So when people began to tell me, like, well, we don't have body cam of this, I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute, man. In today's world, you don't have body cam? That doesn't sound right. Like, that's not right. There's something wrong with this. Even if they don't designate that you have to have it in a case like this Brian Kober case, are you telling
Yeah,
me that you wouldn't truly want every bit of evidence documented that you possibly could? But then in thinking about that, you look at the IGG situation and the other situations, maybe they just didn't want anything done.
yeah.
I don't know.
We have another one from Thrive Off Grid. No DNA in the car. No way a pro could do that in 13 minutes. I believe he's talking about the murders. Because they had like no. Didn't they state in that hearing, brother, that they tore the car apart 3 different times and they couldn't find shit? Like
Yeah,
no
I
DNA,
mean, it
no
was
nothing.
clearly stated by Ann Taylor that car was destroyed 3 times looking for evidence of that with nothing. But let's also think about something real quick, because we still are talking about a 13-minute time frame. But I want
Yeah.
to just real quick take a deep breath and think about what Ashley Jennings was talking about when she says 7 minutes doesn't matter. Okay. So if we change this timeline, if the car is going the wrong way and we're 7 minutes worth of time off, and then we have to not only utilize that 7 minutes we're off, but the 7 minutes to get back to that point when the car turned around to go back the other direction. So let's just say we stay at 7 minutes off. Now we're talking
Yeah.
about, the crime, instead of being 4 o'clock, 4:25, now we're talking about 4:07, and none of this fits into a time frame that would fit law enforcement's line. You're
Narrative.
7 minutes off. So now
Yeah.
what are you saying? He did it in 6 minutes? Instead of 13, he did it in 6? Is that what you're saying? That's capable of being done, and that 7 minutes worth of time doesn't matter? Hell yeah, it matters. 7 minutes worth of time in a crime matters. Remember, you're talking to a guy that pinpoint planned his crimes. 7 minutes matters.
Yeah.
Absolutely matters. That could be the major difference of leaving a crime scene in handcuffs and not accomplishing what you set out to accomplish, or not even getting into the crime scene in a time that you're capable of committing the crime. It changes the whole scene. The whole thing changes. 7 minutes
Yep.
changes who's up going to the bathroom, whose DoorDash order arrived. The whole scenario changes. That 7 minutes is huge, huge. And to hear a prosecutor say 7 minutes doesn't matter makes me sick. That makes me sick.
Yeah. And well, just like she tried to add something. She tried to add an extra tower. There in Moscow, where everyone knows there's only two towers, two cell towers. One there in Pullman and one there in Moscow. And she tried to add that third tower, and the judge came
Judge,
down on her for doing it.
yeah, Judge is like, so now are we wanting to enter this in after the fact? Because that'll make sure that I grant the Frank's hearing. And it's like,
Oh yeah, yeah, Judge
let's wipe
Hitler.
that
Yeah,
out. Yeah, yeah. And Jennings is like, we'll just ignore that. Well, no, I would have screamed right there. And this is where Brian Kober, and I know you did a video on it, how he stays so quiet and just non-moving, like
yeah.
staring forward in the courtroom. I would have jumped up and been, 7 minutes doesn't freaking matter. What do you mean? A third tower? Now you want to say there's a third tower? You don't think that was important during discovery? Yeah, hell yeah. This
Yeah,
is like Frank's hearing. You just proved it in a court of law. I
yeah.
would have been a little more vocal, but that's why I would have also been held in contempt of court. I would have been in the spit chair. I would have been cuffed.
Yeah, Tara would have been
Well,
strapped down to a chair with a spit mask on.
why don't we open up to our chat for a little while to where they're able? Are you
Okay.
able to see my chat as well, or can you only see yours?
Yeah, I can see both. I can see my chat and your chat.
Okay. Okay. Good,
Heather
because
just
I can
stated
see the
there are
chat.
three. Yeah, Heather just stated there are three towers, but one doesn't regularly provide service to King Road. Yeah, and she brings up TRP Thought Ride podcast has a video on this, and she said from the end of 2023, I think, and then
Yeah,
Too
I do
Fast.
remember the video. I remember them talking
Yeah,
about.
Too Fast says that 7 minute turns into 14 if you travel to the west from for 7 minutes, then you travel back to the spot you started in. It takes 14 minutes just to be back in the same spot. So Too Fast is saying you can travel 7 minutes one way and 7 minutes the other, and that's the 14 minutes.
Yeah, that's what I was actually trying.
Oh, what happened? He lost power. He'll be back. Hopefully. Okay. Buckwheat. I had a dog when I was a boy, and Mutt named Sport. He loved and slept with me. As an adult, I had two cats, Rudolph and Valentino. Well, that's cool, Rudolph Valentino. Okay. Uh, what I have an issue with is that they completely ignored the university community frat houses and basically said, "Oh, they had nothing to do with this. They are all innocent." Well, if you go back and look, that during the alcohol Banfield stop, you could see 4 or 5 people running away from the King Road home um, a little bit after 3 in the morning, and it looked like they were running back towards the frat house. What? Oh, please don't read the next one. I love Robert. I love you too, Kiki. Let's see. they traumatized and embarrassed his family and caused damage unnecessarily. Yes, they did. Yeah, Catherine. Yes, they did. Hello, brother.
Am I back?
You're back. I just going through reading some comments and I came across a disturbing one from Kiki. I was like, wait, what? Yeah, she said, "Oh, please don't read the next one. I love Robert." That came from our Kiki.
Oh, Kiki.
Okay,
I'm telling you,
so
this
I
apartment's
got
like the worst when it comes to internet. And then my Wi-Fi's out now, so you'll have to bear with me. Hopefully, I can hang in there.
well, we got like I think 5 or 10 minutes left on the live. Swamp Rose
Okay.
goes, Robert, when do you think they BK's name was it on the 19th from the IGG? Uh, so Kiki's wanting to know when we think that they got Brian's name. Was it on the 19th from the IGG? I think honestly, I don't know if you'll agree with me, brother. I think that they got his name from when those two separate Moscow, the Washington State University police officers found his car there on the lot when they and I believe that was around November 25th. You had one that was querying Hyundai Elantras, and then they got it that way, and then you had another one about 30 minutes later driving around looking for Hyundai Elantras, and then they found his car that way too. So I think that Brian was on their radar from November 25th. But what I don't understand is if he was on their radar, if he was a person of interest, why didn't they bring him in for questioning or get some DNA from him?
Yeah, I mean this is going to be, I mean, the everyday argument within this case all across the board because many people are sticking with, well, the IGG what came back, and that's what got the name, and that's when they were on to him. Where I sit here and I watch those pullovers in Indiana and say they were on to him well before that because they pulled him over
Yeah,
in Indiana twice. And I know what it's like to be followed and chased. And they wouldn't have known like what hotel he stayed at in Colorado and all of that. If there's just so much that goes into that, but I could tell you this: if your theory is correct, and they were on to him when the officers found his car at Washington State University, then we need a Franks here because everything about what they're saying is a lie. Um, I mean, just any route you go, we end up at the very same spot. We end up back at a Franks hearing. I mean, and
yeah,
that based upon dishonest statements either being made or people getting caught in falsifying statements or warrants or whatever it might
yeah,
be. Uh, and I don't know what it is, and I don't want to lay a claim that I do. But the one thing I can say that investigations are extremely difficult for investigators to be able to piece together. I know it's a lot of work,
yeah,
and unfortunately, when you begin to cut corners and you start to utilize uh, things that are there protected so that they're not a benefit to you, but you still utilize them in a manner to benefit yourself.
yeah,
That's where we get at this point, and just really picture yourself as you parents. Do you hear how when's the last time you heard that man speak?
who?
Bill Thompson,
Yeah.
the lead prosecutor of Latah
Uh,
County.
yeah, you were breaking up, so I had a hard time understanding you.
Uh, sorry. Yeah.
I haven't heard Bill Thompson speak, and since the hearings were in Latah. Yeah,
Right.
he hasn't. Yeah, I
So,
mean he has sat there and turned purple in the courtroom, but
right.
other than that, I really haven't heard him talk. It's been mainly that the Nye guy and Jennings, and then the other person that they had, but I haven't heard him speak since Latah.
I mean, don't you think? And I'm sure people within the chat could really. Am I really breaking up still? I see
No,
people
no, you're
really
fine
breaking
now.
up. Okay, I've tried to get outside and try to be in a little better spot, but um, there's no way that Bill Thompson's not a better speaker than Ashley Jennings. I mean, we all
Yeah.
watched Ashley Jennings, and she struggles. She really, really struggles. And it's real eye opening to see Bill Thompson sit there and not say a word. He just leans back in his chair. It's like he's trying to avoid anything that's literally happening. And people are saying that I'm breaking up here or there. So, um,
And
I mean,
just
I
well,
want to do
when
this again.
yeah, so do I, brother. And like when Alicia Jennings was up there putting her foot in her mouth, and Hitler was getting on to her about the whole third cell tower. You can look over and see freaking Bill Thompson turning purple in his chair. I don't understand why they didn't send Nye back up there, because Nye was very eloquent when he was up there talking. And you send her up there, and it's like a fourth grader trying to talk to a judge in a trial.
I agree, and I'll tell you, from what I see, Jeff Nye is the best of all of them. He's going to be the one to watch at trial. I think he's very direct and he's well spoken. He knows what he's talking about. I think he'll present the opening statements in the case, and I think
Yeah.
he'll do a lot of the question of people. Do you think they have the right guy? No, I don't believe they have the right individual.
No.
Um, I'm not one that's going to speak upon like pointing the fingers, naming names of who else may be involved because I don't know. I don't have evidence against anybody else. Just the same as I don't see any evidence against Brian Koberger at this point
Yeah.
that's strong enough. Now, look, I get the DNA. I get it, guys. Anytime I've heard
Yeah.
DNA in cases, I myself gravitate towards, you're nailed, dude. If you left DNA or fingerprints at the scene, you're pretty much nailed. But this is a little bit different of a thinking scenario, considering this is a movable object. And
Yeah.
also, because I know this type of DNA can be moved without even the object, just on a sleeve or on someone's
Yeah.
glove or on a shoe. Or I mean, there's so many various ways. And that's why many entities, including our own United States military, will not recognize this type of DNA in any type of case. So that concerns me that that's the only type of DNA that we have in this case
Yeah.
against this suspect. Now, if they came out and they said, by the way, we also have X, Y, and Z, then I would have to rethink that and go, Brian, you've got answering to do. You got a lot of
Yeah.
answering to do. So
Yeah.
I think that is the biggest thing is unfortunately so far all we've seen in this case that does carry you is also something that carries some of the biggest questions, and that is the sheath and the DNA. So
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
that
Jeff
that's
just
something
made.
that's going to be argued
Yeah.
out.
Yeah, Jeff just made comment. They probably did a focus group and they found it was better to have a woman on prosecution go up against a woman on defense. Thompson gets a little heated, and I think he's ready for the trial to start. Well, you know that first part about the focus group. Well, maybe they need to focus on keeping an Alyssa Jennings away from that microphone because she royally put her foot in her mouth that day.
Yeah, she didn't look so good. Now, one of the questions I do have before we head out, the prosecution had motioned to bring in some more help, some heavy
Yeah,
hitters that are even a little bit higher up the food chain than Jeff Nye is, and I haven't come to the finding of what type of ruling was based upon that. Have they
yeah.
ruled on whether there could be more prosecutors involved in this? Is there some more bigwigs coming in, or did he rule against that?
I am definitely not sure on that. I know I read a motion that uh, they want they want a witness for Brian to testify by Zoom, but they don't state who this witness is. They don't state if it was an expert witness or maybe maybe a character witness. But all it says it's a request to have somebody testify on Brian's behalf via Zoom, and of
Yeah, that already
course
that already happened.
they've already sit.
Yeah, that already
It
happened.
did okay,
Yeah, that already took
but no,
place. So
N no, I haven't seen, anything like bringing more, heavy hitters in. They do need heavy hitters, like someone to replace freaking Alyssa Jennings, and personally, I think they need to replace Jay Logston as well, because, a lot of his motions are very drastically misspelled, and I could tell that they were misspelled. I don't know if you would agree with that, brother.
yeah, absolutely. And then this question real quick. In regards to actual touch DNA, it doesn't have anything to do with fingerprints because Dutch touch DNA doesn't actually mean that you touch something to leave DNA on it. It's actual flakes from the skin that have flaked up can fall onto any object or surface, and that's considered touch DNA because it literally is just a very little amount that scraped off your skin and touched down onto an actual object. So I think it's pretty poor technology when they utilize like touch DNA as if you touch something to leave that DNA, but that's not actually the case.
Yeah, well,
Am I
Thrive Off
gone?
the Grid just no, you're still here. Thrive Off the Grid just said, because the prints were white prior to incident, DNA you can miss under the button snap. Um, I mean, what I'd like to know is, because I saw, on some of the stuff that they were sealing from earlier in the case, they were like desperately trying to find the murder weapon, and they were sending search warrants to like different like eBay and Amazon and this K-bar store and then Blue Steel Knife and I don't know if they're trying to find the exact fit for that sheet or I don't know what they're doing.
I mean, it's a lot of investigative work. There's no doubt
Yeah.
about that. So I'm going to actually, Robert, let's wrap it up for tonight because
Yeah.
I'm really struggling with the Wi-Fi. But
Oh,
maybe we can
I
get
understand.
together. Let's get back together again tomorrow night. Maybe
Okay.
continue with the live. We can interact with the crowd. We can answer questions, and we
Okay.
can move forward with some other topics as well. But it's definitely been a blast. I really enjoyed talking with
Oh yeah.
you, and then the crowd has been amazing. And maybe
Yeah.
tomorrow we can open up for more questions and more discussion as well.
Yeah. Mouse said I came back over to Roberts to give him more views, and Cheryl
Yeah,
said thank you. Cheryl said thank you, Robert and AR.
I definitely appreciate everybody being here and all of the supporters. And if anybody can do anything for me tonight, just stop back by over to Robert's channel, give him a big thumbs up, leave him a comment, get him some views as well, give him some love on his channel because he works very hard. He works very hard behind the scenes with me. We discuss a
Yeah.
lot of things. We give each other a lot of help in trying to better not only
Yeah.
our channels but ourselves. Swamp Rose is also a big part of that, so we give out a big shout out to her, a lot of love to her, both as a creator and as a friend. And
Yeah.
Doodlebug, I have to say just real quick, Doodlebug, she was my very first ever actual moderator on my channel. She's one of my favorite people in the world. She also has a very special, very meaningful channel of her own that's dedicating to help find the missing. So if anybody in here is able to please drop the link before we head out to Doodlebug's channel, please subscribe to that channel. Show her some love. She is dedicated. She
Yeah.
is 100% one of the most caring and loving people out there. one of my biggest supporters. Let me tell you that what a human being Doodlebug is, and I'm very thankful.
Yeah.
And for everybody else that's joined us, I appreciate all of you. And Robert, you know you're my brother, and I
Yeah.
love you very much too.
And I love you very much too, brother. Jeff says I don't always agree with you guys, but I do like you guys. Great discussion. Well, thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Jeff. Yeah, and that's what it's all about. We're not here to all agree. We're not here to
Yeah.
all agree whatsoever. I think it's good to have different points of view, disagreements, because that's the best way to engage a proper discussion. And as long as
Yeah.
we do that respectfully and we do that in a tone that's for learning and bettering ourselves, I'm all about it. So thank you, Jeff. We definitely appreciate you. Thank you for joining us. And everybody out there, we send you
Yeah.
guys all big hugs, lots of love. And
Oh
Robert,
yeah.
what do you say? We'll do it again. We'll do it again tomorrow.
Yeah. We'll do it again tomorrow, same time.
All right. Well, then I guess we'll be back to harass more people tomorrow. I
Everyone
want to
have a
say
good
thank you,
night.
guys.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I want to say thank you to everyone that was in my chat, especially my mods and Mouse and now yeah, everyone. You have a good night. And this is True Crime Unraveled, and I'm out. And it's AR Hayes.
Thank you, guys. Have a great night.